Here in the third block of the Cultural Hall, we are very honored to be able to visit with Nate Eaton. Now, if you don't know Nate Eaton, he is with East Idaho News. Follow the Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell case from the very beginning. In fact, if you have seen the "Where are your kids at" in Hawaii, he's the "Where are your kids? Where are your kids?" That's Nate Eaton. He chased him down into Hawaii and has been following the case. Nate, thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me back. Good to chat with you.
I'm excited to be able to get kind of like a 50% update as far as this whole thing with the Lori part sort of being closed-ish for now. But I have to tell you before we go any further, I was talking with my mom the other day, and she said, and I'm going to do my best to not make my mom sound like she's 120, but she said, "You know this Nate Eaton? He does such a great job." If
Hi,
if you
Mom.
if you ever talk with him, and I said, "Yeah, Mom, I've talked with him several times. I would actually, in fact, consider him a friend." I said, "Yeah, I'll tell him." She said, "You know him? He has done a phenomenal job, really good about explaining all of the things so that people can just follow along and just committed." And then she says, "I wonder if his family has seen him in the last couple of years."
Your mom's a good observer. So
Yeah.
first of all, hi, Mom. And yes, I was in Boise. So to set some context, Idaho Falls is about 4 hours away from Boise, where the trial was held. And so I was in Boise for 6 weeks. And so I saw my computer far more than I saw my kids. But I'm home now, and we're leaving on a weekend cruise. My parents' 50th anniversary is happening, so they're taking all the adult kids. And so it'll be nice to be with family, and hopefully nobody on the ship has followed this case, because I find everywhere I go, it's what people want to talk about, which is very nice. I'm
Sure.
flattered and honored, and I appreciate your mom's kind words. But it's one of those cases, Richie, that probably in 10 years, people will still be talking about it, because
Sure.
you can't wrap your mind around all of the craziness and the tragedy and everything that's involved in it. So yeah, I'm seeing my family more now, to answer your question.
Yeah, I was excited. We actually, if you pay attention, we have a little bit of quick audio of one of your children just a couple weeks ago when the case ended, and I'll play that for you real quick. Who are you? Are you? Are you my dad? I'm just teasing. I don't mean to lay the guilt on the commitment that you have to following this case and the work that you've done. In all seriousness, I know not just us here in the Cultural Hall. I know not just my mom, but every single person that I've heard mention the case mentions the high caliber of which you have delivered the information about it.
Well, that's very polite. Honestly, we got to give credit to the prosecutors, to the police, to the investigators, who, as many hours as I may have put in, they have lived and breathed this constantly since November of 2019. I mean, that was pre-COVID. It seems like so long ago. And these guys, and they had a case to prove. I mean, they had to get the evidence and find the experts and line it all up. So I'm just doing my job reporting the news, and the court system can be complex and hard to understand. And so, my job, my goal is to try to make it easy to comprehend, not make it boring, not sensationalize it, because man, this is one story you could really sensationalize and get more eyeballs. But I don't think there's any need for that. So yeah, I mean, you mentioned we're far from over. Lori will be sentenced July 31st. It's likely she'll get life in prison. She could get a couple of life sentences because she was found guilty on all counts. And then we have Chad's trial, which will likely happen next summer if he doesn't do a plea agreement. And then we have Lori, who's facing more charges in Arizona: conspiracy to commit murder on her fourth husband, Charles Vallow, and conspiracy to commit murder on Brandon Boudreaux, her nephew, or former nephew. So a big part of it's over, but there's still a lot more ahead.
What's the play? I know as far as Lori goes, death penalty is not on the table for her, but for Chad it still is. Is there any thought that it could be just like 25 years and we could be seeing Lori in 25 years in the future being able to get out, or is it most assuredly just how many life sentences she's going to get?
I mean, there's always a chance. The judge has full discretion on that. I don't foresee I don't foresee her walking out in 25 years. These are, I mean, you have 2 murder charges, 3 conspiracy murder charges, and a grand theft. And then in Arizona, you've got the conspiracy to commit murder charges. So I think that we'll likely see life. And in Idaho, if you're sentenced to a fixed sentence of life, there's no parole.
Hmm.
So a lot of people are worried, could she get parole in 25 years? If the judge says, I'm going to sentence you 50 years to life, then in 50 years, you could get out on parole. But that's up to the judge. And right now they're doing a big pre-sentence investigation. An investigator comes in and interviews Lori if she'll cooperate, her family, and then makes a recommendation to the judge on what a sentence could be. But the judge has full discretion.
Chasing down that Arizona part of it, how does that work? So she'll be sentenced in Idaho, and then are they like, pack your bags, we're going to Arizona and doing this whole thing again, or what does that look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. Arizona has said that they'll wait until she's sentenced, and then they have indicated they want to extradite her, meaning send her down there to Arizona to await those charges. Now she could fight that, and her attorney could say, listen, we're going to keep her in Idaho until the trial is ready in Arizona, or maybe they make a plea agreement where she goes down there and appears and pleads guilty. So I think that's to be determined. The fact is, though, that Maricopa County has indicated they want to pursue these charges and they want to extradite her. So we could have 2 more trials for her. And I know that's what Charles Vallow, her 4th husband, that's what his family wants. They want her to have a trial in Arizona.
Which to some people may seem a little punitive. It's like, listen, she's already going away for life, assuming that that's what the sentence is, but justice truly served when she faces for those particular, crimes and in that particular area. So what does this change then for Chad? So is there any, and I know a lot of people who sort of speculated this, that one would point the finger to the other. Is there any chance that Chad can be like, yeah, Lori, it was all her, guys. You already got her. You got the one who did all this. I was there for some of it. It was on my property. Any chance that he'll get anything less than life? I mean, sure, there is a chance, but what do you think is the position there from his defense?
Well, you would think that would be his defense, that point the finger at Lori and Alex, her dead brother. Lori could have done a lot more of that in her trial, pointed the finger at Chad, but she did not want to. In fact, at the closing arguments where her attorney kind of, I don't want to say threw Chad under the bus, but pointed the finger at him, and he called Chad's books stupid. Lori was very upset. She was very upset. Visibly, you could see it in the courtroom. Didn't want to speak to him. The fact that her attorney would throw Chad under the bus. So Chad may take the same approach where he does not go after Lori, but I imagine that would be the approach to take. I'm sure that he's seriously considering a plea agreement at this point because she was found guilty on everything. They have more evidence on Chad. As you mentioned, the kids were on his property.
Mm-hmm.
The condition is, though, he would have to admit that he killed Tammy, his wife. That is a condition that her family wants in order to agree to a plea agreement. And that would be a big thing for him to admit publicly that I killed my wife. So I'm sure that they're coming up with some strategy. I know that he's going to read through all of the transcripts of Lori's trial and listen to the audio and find out what evidence they had, and then we'll see what he does from there.
And is the reason why he would take a plea so he avoids the death penalty? Is that's basically the only reason he would do that?
I think that's all prosecutors would say. You either go to trial and you could face the death penalty, or as part of a plea agreement, life in prison, no parole. We save the trial, we save the money, and you go away for life. I think those would be the only options. I don't foresee the prosecutor saying, okay, in 10 years you can be out. I'm sure Chad would ask for that, and maybe it's not a life sentence. Maybe it's like 400-year sentences, or however they do it, where he's not going to walk again.
Does he face?
Assuming he's guilty, he is still presumed innocent. He has not been convicted. Assuming he is found guilty or does plead guilty.
Is he implicated in either Charles Vallow or the Brandon Boudreaux, or is he absent of those 2 cases?
He has not been charged, and the prosecutors in Arizona say they don't think they have enough evidence that a jury would convict him. So yeah, he, as of now, I mean, that could change down the line should they choose to indict, but they have said publicly that as of now, Lori so far is the only one facing charges in Arizona.
So the big significant dates as we sort of round this out, the 31st of July is when Lori will be sentenced, and then walk us through some other timeline stuff.
So 31st of July is when she's sentenced. We then will hear what Arizona is going to do. They could move her down to Arizona as early as this summer, late summer, early fall, and the wheels of justice go slow. So I don't foresee a trial there for her if everything goes as planned until maybe next year. As for Chad, his attorney really wants the trial next June, and he said it will be 12 weeks. It's a death penalty case. The judge hasn't set a date on that, but you know, Lori had 60 witnesses in her trial. They've got to coordinate at least 60 witnesses for him and scheduling and all that. So I foresee if he goes to trial, that happening next summer, maybe late spring.
Are conditions better for Lori in Arizona than they would be in Idaho if she's awaiting the trial down there as opposed to just serving time in Idaho?
Well, the jail she's in now in Rexburg is actually a nice facility, and they have good food, which they actually have like a chef who comes in and the inmates help prepare it. And if you're going to go to jail in Eastern Idaho, go for Madison. Some other jails, it's like pot pies and frozen biscuits. That's what Chad gets every day. So, but that will change once she's sentenced to life in prison or prison in general. She then goes to the prison, you know, the hardcore prison, not a
Yep.
local jail. And you know, there it's pretty strict. If she goes to Arizona, she'll go back to the Maricopa County Jail. So I know a lot of people are like, what's the difference? The jail is the local facility, the prison is the state facility. Prisons, it's a lot more, by all indications, rough. You know, not as many benefits as a local jail. So I'm not sure how the jail facility is in Arizona. And then if she's found guilty of life there, I don't know where she'll serve the time, in Arizona or in Idaho. I think they'd have to come up with some sort of agreement.
Does it matter?
Yeah, I don't know if it matters.
Yeah. I just am curious. Like, well,
Other
listen,
than the taxpayers of one of the states will pay for it.
it's just a bunch of taxpayers yelling, "You take her! Ah, you take her! We don't want her."
Yeah.
So next June, then, have you already broken it to your kids that you're like, "Listen, enjoy Dad."
I don't want to spend all summer in a courtroom next year. That's what I know for sure. But well, I'll go, and I plan to go to Arizona. I mean, this is one of those stories. I was there from the beginning. I have to be there till the end, and we'll see what happens. If it happens in June, it'll happen in June. I'm just kind of glad it's not over Christmas. So
Sure.
that's
On a personal side note, how has it affected you? What sort of takeaways? Is it just been exhaustion? Has it been, and you would hate to maybe say it this way, but like I imagine there's some part of you that looks at this as like a professional accomplishment that you're just like, man, what a challenge, and that you were able to rise to it. You'd never want this to happen. That's not what I'm saying. But like as you sort of reflect on in this sort of pause period of this whole case, like what do you find your mind going to? What are you thinking?
You know, I was surprised at how emotional the verdict was. It's hard to explain unless you were in the courtroom. But what got me is I walked out of the courtroom after the verdict was read. All the media was running out to do their live shots, and as I walked out of the courtroom, lining the hallway was all of the officers who spent so much time working on this. And the grandparents were emotional, they were crying. And this huge officer, he's like 6'7" and just a big dude. He had tears running down his cheeks, and he grabbed me and pulled me in and gave me this big bear hug. And I started to cry. And I'm not emotional a lot of the time, especially when I cover my job, but I then walked down the stairs to go outside, and I walked really slow, thinking all of this 3.5 years just came here to the guilty verdict. I mean, and I actually went on our website and did a live shot and kind of became emotional there that the guilty verdict had come in. So it was emotion, it was exhaustion, it's been relief. Without a doubt, professionally, people recognize me for the story. and that was never a goal of mine. I just, report the news. So it's a little bit of everything. I'm just glad that, one big step is over and to see these families finally get there. And I think the sentencing hearing is going to be emotional on the 31st. All the victims get to read it, take the stand and look at Lori and share their thoughts if they want.
Hmm.
They can write a letter. It's called victim impact statements. I mean, I've covered these and they're very emotional. This sentencing hearing will last hours. And then Lori will likely get a chance to say something if she wants. And other defendants have apologized or cried or expressed remorse. Honestly, I'm not expecting that from her based on her reactions. It would be something if she did say something, or she can remain silent. So yeah, it's been a mix of emotions, but it's nice to have a break.
Yeah. Well, again, I can't say enough on behalf of myself, other people, and of course my mom. What a great job you did.
Thank you, Mom.
And continue to do with it. I'm excited to be able to visit with you again. We'll probably have you come back in after the sentencing and talk about what that experience was like, all those victim impact statements. If there's anything else that happens along the way, of course, we're in contact with each other. We'll invite you back in to tell us
Sure.
about it. And as always, appreciate you being able to take a little bit of time. I hope that this episode has nourished and strengthened your body, that if you're not healthy enough to listen this week, that you'll be healthy enough to listen next week. And when the time comes, you'll be able to travel home in safety. In the meantime, we'll be saving a seat for you on the back row of the Cultural Hall.